What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is Let's Be Real with Brad. So today we are going to be talking about Jungle Cruise with my girlfriend Maddie here today because I am in the middle of moving. We are moving in together and I'll be starting my new job Monday. My videos will not be affected by it. So now we're going to do a spoiler-free / spoiler review. And I would like to introduce my guest, my girlfriend, Maddie. How you doing today?
Hey everyone, doing great. Excited to be here finally.
Yeah, I know. I've been doing these Mad Brad reviews for like 2 years now, and I never really got you on a video, so it's kind of cool I got you here. So I think we should talk about our expectations first, just to get the audience into what we thought about the movie, because I want people to know going in that I was interested seeing it. I think you probably were too, but I think, at least for me, I was very worried about how this movie would come across because everything just screamed 1999 Mummy, and we ended up rewatching the movie. And so going into this movie, I was very nervous because now watching that movie again, I was like, this is going to be even worse.
Yeah, I agree. I was probably a little bit not as excited as you. A lot of the live action movies don't end up so well, so I haven't even seen some of them because they're so bad. So I was definitely interested in watching it, but I didn't have high hopes.
Yeah, I also think that everything about the movie just screamed being a generic movie because I felt like in the trailer, like, it just looked like something I would expect from Disney. Just very generic looking. Feel like there's no style to it. So now that we're going to go into our spoiler-free review, I'm going to be doing my spoiler-free review first. Maddie, you'll go next, and we'll give our ratings for it. And then we'll head into spoilers. So if you don't want to be spoiled, watch this section of this video. So starting off, I'm not going to lie, I really didn't like this movie. I felt like it was very generic, run-of-the-mill kind of movie. I can't say, like, it's terrible, like, because I know that I'll probably be crapping on this movie. But, like, my whole thing with the movie is just, like, it's so forgettable. Like, this is a $200 million movie, and it just looked bad, it wasn't interesting, and a Disney movie shouldn't bore me. Like, they're so surface level that it should just be so easy to watch. And it bored me almost to sleep, and I just probably won't watch this movie again, even if there is some fun adventure along the way. What did you think of it?
I did not like it. I would call it average and boring. There were no surprises along the way. It was very stick to the plan and just check off all the marks that Disney needs to check to make a movie kind of thing.
Yup.
I don't think I would watch it again either.
So I guess I'll just rate this movie a 5 out of 10.
I think the more we talk about this, I think I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10.
I guess we're going to go to spoiler talk first, and I want to say that there's a lot of high praise for this movie. Nothing like astronomical or anything, but we are technically in the minority right now. If you base on like Rotten Tomatoes or some of the people on IMDb and Letterboxd users, they're really liking this movie at the time of this recording of this video. So it does seem like I was trying to get why people were liking it. And I'm going to be honest, I just don't care for it. I kind of just don't see the hype for it. And I think maybe it's because this is like the perfect movie for what's going on right now. I feel like just the average moviegoer is going to have a good time with this. But unfortunately, we've been watching movies for a while, and so like this is just not impressive. But I also think like this might be like one of the first movies that like people actually gone out to see.
I definitely agree with you. This is more of a big movie that's everybody can watch in the family.
Yup.
Where a lot of the big movies we've gotten so far are more for an adult audience.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's get into our first negative that we really want to talk about. And that is just ripping off other movies like 1999 Mummy, Pirates of the Caribbean, mostly Curse of the Black Pearl and Dead Man's Chest, and the 1972 foreign film Aguirre, The Wrath of God that we have not seen, but we were seeing reviews for on Letterboxd about it. So you start us off and get right into our criticism of that.
The 1999 Mummy movie is my favorite movie. I've seen it, I couldn't even tell you how many times. I probably started watching it when I was way too young, but I fell in love with it. I love everything about it. And even just the trailer for the Jungle Cruise screams The Mummy. If you look at Dr. Lily, played by Emily Blunt, she is an intelligent, driven adventurer who just wants to find this treasure. And that's exactly like the librarian we have in The Mummy, Evelyn, who is quirky, independent, fun. Like, they just are exactly the same. They both have brothers, and we need a side by side. They're both wearing the same white suit. And both of them are witty, and they're both charming, but people don't like them. Everything is just exactly the same.
And it also makes it worse because Brendan Fraser in The Mummy feels very similar to, like, The Rock. But it's funny because you would think, like, if you put it on paper and you were to compare the two movies, you hadn't seen the two of them, I would be like, The Rock would be better. Just because Brendan Fraser's kind of had, like, a very interesting career. And, you know, The Rock is made for these big budget movies. He has the charisma. Everyone loves The Rock. He's, like, the highest paid actor right now. But it's kind of crazy that I loved Brendan Fraser way more in The Mummy than The Rock in this. You want to get up on that?
I agree. I think that Brendan Fraser just knew how to pull the like action aspect of it, but also have the corny, cheesy aspect of it. It's like there's suspense, but it's not ever too serious, and it's funny, but it's not ever too ridiculous, where The Rock kind of just doesn't get that balance.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just the direction, because also The Rock is very good when he's in Fast and Furious, and when Justin Lin is telling him, you know, how to play. And I just don't know if it was just a lack of direction. He's just, you know, phoning it in. But, like, I felt like he had no charisma. And I know that he's playing a very different character. But you can have charisma. You can be energetic. You can be interesting. And I just did not care for The Rock. I almost think that his name alone and his face is going to get people into seats. But I really feel like you could have just changed him with anybody, though.
Oh, for sure. It could have been anybody else.
It just doesn't feel like he fits well into this movie. And I feel like on paper, though, this should be a really good pairing of Emily Blunt and The Rock. They both got charisma. They're both, like, great performers. And I just felt like just wasn't the right role. And I don't know if it's just because he didn't get good direction. Let's talk about also with ripping off other movies and the fact that how the story is very similar. Well, we get to, like, this adventure and they team up, which is like The Mummy. But then we also get into, like, the aspect of they're going to, like, this dark dungeon and they're dealing with these creature people. I didn't even know what they were. I just didn't care. They gave like a whole backstory that was just so boring. And I felt like they were just turning into the Curse of the Black Pearl, where they all can, like, live, and it's like a healing power. I don't know. Like, you probably know more because you've seen both of those movies clearly a lot more. What did you think of, like, that copycat?
Definitely portray both the undead pirates in the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and also the Davy Jones crew.
Yup.
All, like, made of, like, sea creatures. Let's also talk about that foreign film you mentioned.
The Agur, the Wrath of God movie?
Yeah, so I don't know if you read the description of it, but this movie could be, like, a sequel to it. Basically, like, the backstory of the Jungle Cruise with the conquistadors looking for this treasure. That's exactly what happens in that 1972 foreign film.
See, that's interesting. I almost want to just, like, go on my way to watch it. I almost wish we watched it before, like, we did it, because I feel like we'd have so much more to talk about. Like, this movie just feels like it's just copying on the movies in general. Like, even if we hadn't seen it, it's already copying two other movies. One is already owned by them, and that was one of their biggest live-action franchises.
Yeah.
And that is, like, such, like, a disgrace. Where, like, I know it seems like we're just ripping on this movie just because it's copying on the films. And you can make the argument, like, well, other movies copy other movies, right? Like, you know, I understand that. But, like, you can have homages to other movies, but still have your own voice. Where you have something like Stranger Things, it has homages to other movies and shows of the 1980s, like sci-fi horror stuff. But then it kind of created its own thing. And now that we see anything that's like Stranger Things, we actually call it Stranger Things now. Oh, it's like Stranger Things. Because Stranger Things was able to create its own voice. This, however, am I going to look at another movie that's similar? It's like, oh, it's like Jungle Cruise. No, I'm never going to call this like anything like Jungle Cruise. Unless it's literally like a Jungle Cruise. but like the style of it, the action, the characters all feel like just other characters we've seen in other movies. I didn't care for anything that was going on in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think where most movies, if they are taking something from another source, they are respectful of it. And this one, it kind of just was like, well, Pirates of the Caribbean is our movie, so does it really matter? I think they just were too focused on trying to make the next big adventure franchise.
I agree. So let's get into the screenplay of this movie. And I thought it was god awful. I thought that the dialogue in this movie was atrocious. This has that kind of humor. Oh no, you do it. Oh no, wait. No, you do it. Oh, I'm sorry. Like that kind of humor I hate in these mainstream movies. Is so agonizing, and they do it so much in this movie. And I don't know, like Maddie, is that like a trend that people like? Like,
yeah, I don't like that like awkward, like clumsy humor. It's not funny to me. It just like, I don't know, it makes the movie uncomfortable and I don't want to watch it. Like, they also had a lot of cheesy humor. Like at the beginning when they're on the jungle, like the actual Jungle Cruise, they're making all the exact same puns that you would experience on the ride, which I actually like did enjoy. I thought it was funny that they like put that in there and everybody will recognize it. But then they like try to keep going with the puns and like they just fall flat.
Yeah, exactly. We were talking about it before about how we actually liked the beginning of it, but it almost felt like they should have been more satirical of itself. And it should have been, more self-aware and be like, yeah, this is pretty dumb, right? Like some of the jokes we're making are really stupid. Like, oh man, I have to say these stupid corny jokes all day to these dumb passengers would have been like really funny, a little bit more sanitized because don't want to ruin the reputation that Disney has. It just feels like they weren't self-aware of how punny they were, and they kind of just kept with it, and it just didn't make it funny.
Let's also talk about my favorite joke of the whole movie.
Oh no, here we go.
Oh, you definitely know what's coming. We have Emily Blunt's character, and she is a woman in 1916, and because she's wearing pants and it's 1916, The Rock decides it would be hilarious to nickname her pants, and he stresses this nickname the whole movie, and boy, it just does not get old. No, it gets old. And then in return, she calls him Skippy, like Skipper. Hilarious, very clever.
Yeah, there's a lot of like the screenplay feels like it was almost like a first draft, but then they like changed things and like they didn't like rewrite certain areas, because I don't know why Disney was like approved of this and was just like, yeah, this is really funny. People are gonna laugh at this. Oh, get it? Because they're trying. Is it like a self-aware of like the sexism like jokes? Because there's a lot of sexist jokes in here that were really annoying, and I don't know if it was trying to be self-aware, like, oh, they're trying to make the jokes because it's 1916, and there would be a lot of sexist jokes that were made. It almost felt so unnecessary. Like, we had the Pirates of the Caribbean that were set in like the 1800s, right? Like, yeah. They didn't have like sexist jokes like that, as far as I'm concerned, but they made it like kind of a point because The Rock's character says that so many times, and for some people they literally won't mind this, but when your running joke is about a girl wearing pants, it's just annoying. It's just annoying, and it just doesn't need to be in the movie.
I agree with you. I really hate like just run-on jokes like that throughout a movie. Just drop it and like think of something new.
Yeah, I feel like the humor in this movie was very lazy, and I don't know if you agree with me. I think this is one of the least funniest live-action Disney movies to date. This one is just so average because it does all the check marks. It does the things that you would need to make a movie work. Like, it doesn't miss out on things. That's why I can't say necessarily it's bad.
I think we could have made a funnier movie, honestly.
Yeah, seriously. Like, I feel like the writing in here was so bad. But also, like, if we're going away from the jokes, though, the structure of this movie is also quite clumsy because they have what I can call the worst structure in these mainstream movies that we always talk about and hate, is when it's like a bunch of adventure and fun, and then we gotta have to sit down with these characters with boring, bad dialogue, where they're not even talking like human beings, and they go into this whole backstory that is just like there just to throw exposition there, so they don't have to like cleverly put it into the movie, so you don't have to figure it out. Like, they just tell you everything, and they did it so many times in this movie. It was so lazy.
Yeah, I don't know what the purpose of that, like, it's like you can have character development when you're on this adventure doing stuff. Like, you don't have to sit down and talk one-on-one to learn about each other. I don't know, like The Quiet Place, they have like almost no talking in that movie, yet you know so much about each character and how they act and behave.
Yeah, exactly. And if we even go back to like its genre of like Indiana Jones, like we don't have a sit down Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
It just kind of goes forward. We know who he is. We know why he does what he does. He's a very simple character, but he's likable. This movie, however, their actions don't really show. I mean, we get in the beginning with The Rock, right? We kind of know like how he is, and he's like gonna be very punny, and he like knows his boat, and he wants to go on this adventure and trying to find a treasure. But then when they reveal the whole twist in the movie, I feel like it could have been really good, but it feels like I just didn't care. So when it's just in there, it's just like, all right. And it was only used just to be a plot device so they can escape out of situations, because then she shoots him or he dies like twice and it changes like the whole movie. That's all it's there for, because like what if he was alive? I don't know if it would have changed much.
Yeah, I agree. I think maybe the twist would have worked better if they had put the conquistador backstory at the beginning of the movie.
Yep.
But then that wouldn't have worked for the movie either, because they're like hardly in the movie.
Yeah, exactly. We should definitely kind of get into the different villains that are going on, because we haven't really talked about Jesse Plemons yet. And I like that whole villain storyline of this, like, what is a Russian dude, right? And he's just kind of quirky, like argues with the bee. That was like the funniest scene, and it was intentionally funny. But then Jesse Plemons just really isn't in it. He kind of just shows up whenever he wants just to create some conflict.
Yeah.
But like, there was a whole section in this movie where he's just gone. And then he shows up arguing with the bee. And I was like, where have you been? I wanted more Jesse Plemons. And then we kind of talked about before we did the podcast of like, and you can elaborate more on this about how there is just so many villains. There's just so much going on.
I think having so many sources of conflict here, like with Jesse Plemons, with the conquistadors, even the cannibals for a little while are conflict. I think they're just trying to go for like this huge grand story, and so that's why they have so many conflicts, but it just doesn't work because it's kind of confusing because you don't really know anything about anyone.
Yeah, and even when they do offer a backstory, it's so confusing, and it's just like a big exposition dump that is so boring. Let's segue over to the visual effects. I felt like we were watching a green screen the entire time, and it's Disney. It's a $200 million movie. Like, I know you're not going to be someone that's going to know everything about visual effects, but even you were telling me, like, this looks awful.
Yeah, exactly. I think the animals especially looked so fake. Like, there was a scene with the snake coming out, and it looked like it looked like a cartoon snake. It didn't even remotely look real. I was thinking about it like over the past couple days since we watched the movie, and I was wondering if, because they're trying to go for more of a family audience with younger kids, is why they make the CGI look so bad on these animals. Like, are they trying to not make it look scary, so they make it look fake? What do you think?
But I want to make mention, though, that I feel like a lot of people, they're just gonna be like, oh, this looks good. Like, they're gonna think this has really good CGI. It is, like, okay at times, but I feel like we are, as some people who can see through CGI and we notice things like that, it just looked fake the entire time. And I do agree with you that maybe audiences don't want to be scared. Maybe Pirates of the Caribbean was too scared for them. Like, I don't know. Because we watched that movie. It's kind of scary. But also because there's a lot of practical effects they use. And it's going to come off a lot scarier. You know, especially with something like Davy Jones, who's a scary dude. And, like, this is the build and, like, his skin and, like, just having him have amazing CGI with, like, his tentacles on his face. Make him look pretty creepy. This movie should have just been PG and just kind of go with that fun, almost like Hook route, because we watched Hook recently for the first time. It should have went more the Hook route. But then the movie does try to get dark later on. And there's people, like, fighting and people dying and, like, there's, like, blood sometimes. So, like, pick what you want to do. Don't make it PG-13 and just be like, oh, like, this is gonna be a fun adventure. When this movie really could have just been PG. It felt so sanitized. And even with the visual effects, it just looked so bad.
I agree. They were really atrocious. Like, even the mummy, too. Like, if you think back on what the Mummy looks like throughout the movie, it changes and evolves, but it looks so real and gross. Also, like, the Jungle Cruise hides a lot in, like, nighttime scenes
Yup.
with the CGI, where, like, both The Mummy and Pirates of the Caribbean are, like, amazing, because a lot of their scenes are during the day.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like when the CGI was crazy in Jungle Cruise, it was like all at night and you can't really see what's going on. It was just so distracting. But like when your whole movie is just the basis of CGI and you have $200 million by a big studio, like the biggest studio that's working right now, this movie should look perfect.
Let's talk about their costumes, because I think they need to be talked about.
Yeah, I don't want to go too deep into this because a lot of people probably won't get what we're saying, but I really think if you go back and look at this movie, the costumes look like iParty costumes. Like, they look so generic. If I thought about this movie on, like, just my own imagination, this is exactly how it looked. But not in a good way, though. Just look like the most basic looking people.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think they are too busy trying to make their actors look good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, throughout the movie, it's not like they get torn up and dirty and, like, lose clothing. Like, they just look the same. Like, they just don't look like they're on, like, a nice little glamping adventure or something.
It looks like they're going to, like, this, like, Halloween party or something. It doesn't look real when you look back at other Disney movies recently, and they all look really good, and so what's the excuse here? All right, so let's talk about the acting here. We're not gonna go too deep into the acting just because I felt like they were just super generic. The Rock and Emily Blunt, I didn't think they were great in this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I was expecting a lot from Emily Blunt, and I think she did her best with what she was given.
Yup.
But everyone just kind of just seems like they're acting, not like they're actually explorers in this world. I think my favorite was probably Jesse Plemons.
Yes.
And, like, that's really disappointing because he was hardly in it.
Yeah, they even throw him on the poster too, like he's gonna be a big part of it, and he's just like not in it. Like, my favorite scene is like when he's arguing with the bee. I thought it was really funny because he's pretty much really getting into it, even if his accent is like the most best. But it felt like his energy was severely missing. I also feel like we were talking about, if they don't feel like they're the characters, it's just gonna feel like they're acting. I guess my biggest problem with the movie is that when you have bad direction for the actors, when you have bad dialogue, you're just not gonna be into the movie. And it just felt like I was just seeing a studio-made movie. I thought that it was so disappointing to see like The Rock and Emily Blunt, who are really great performers and have like their charisma. Like, we see Emily Blunt in Mary Poppins. She's so great. I feel like if you showed somebody, this is Emily Blunt, she's a great actress, this is her first movie, you'd be like, I'm not impressed. But I don't think it's her fault though. I know people have been talking about the praise between The Rock and Emily Blunt's charisma and their chemistry. I don't know if it's I just didn't care, but I didn't think it was that great. Like, sure, it acts like they know each other, but I guess it was okay. Like, I didn't think it was awful, but I didn't think it was like, oh, it was one of the best parts of the movie. What'd you think?
Yeah, I feel like they just, maybe it's because there was so much writing changes, but I don't think that they really connected very well. I know we're talking about acting, but this kind of gets into, like, I was researching it earlier, and they actually rewrote this movie so many times. Like, they first announced this movie in, like, 2011, and it was actually supposed to be Tim Allen and Tom Hanks in the movie. And then there was, like, 2 or 3 more rewrites and changes before Emily and Blunt and The Rock got involved, which is why we've waited so long for this movie. And it kind of shows, like, it's very choppy. There's no connection. You don't really care about anybody, you know?
I felt like, I agree with you there, because when you write a role for The Rock, I feel like you have to specifically write. Like, when we watch Moana, I know it's an animated film, but it feels like that was made for him. When you look at Fast and Furious, it's like they picked The Rock. This movie feels like it was kind of just made for anybody to be in the role. Like, anyone could have been in the role and it would have been fine, but they had to pick 2 big actors. Okay, so I guess we'll go into our last remarks and talk about the end of this movie. As a whole, I didn't really care for. I mean, I'm still gonna give this movie a 5 out of 10 because it's just very forgettable. Like, as you said, it did everything it needed to do, and people are going to enjoy this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely won't be watching this movie again. It's just such a copycat. It just is a disgrace to the adventure of The Mummy and Indiana Jones and all those. I'm very disappointed yet again with another live action Disney movie.
So this is our spoiler/spoiler-free review of Jungle Cruise. I hope you guys really enjoy this. This is something that we're be trying to do maybe more in the future if you guys really enjoy it. This is Brad.
I'm Maddie.
We are Let's Be Real Brad
And Maddie.
See you guys later.